When people ask me about the strangest thing I've ever experienced, I usually tell them nothing. It's easier that way. Because if I told them the truth, they'd either think I was lying or losing my mind. And that's happened a few years ago when I was working aboard a cargo ship. Before that, I'd spent most of my life working in restaurant kitchens. Long hours, hot stoves, endless stress. Then the pandemic hit, restaurants started closing, and suddenly I found myself desperate for work. That's how I ended up in the middle of the ocean. At first, I expected to hate it. Surprisingly, I didn't. The crew was small, the routine was predictable, and after a while the endless horizon became oddly comforting. One of the people I became closest to was a deckhand named Tim. Tim looked like he'd been born at sea. Weather-beaten face, thick beard, tattooed arms, and a voice that always sounded like he'd spent the last 20 years yelling into the wind. Almost every night after finishing my shift in the galley, I'd head outside for a cigarette. Most nights, Tim was already there, and most nights, he had a story. Stories about storms that appeared out of nowhere. Stories about ships that vanished without a distress call. Stories about strange lights moving beneath the water at night. I assumed most of them were exaggerated, maybe all of them. But one night he told me a story that felt different. There was no smile, no punchline, no hint that he was trying to entertain me. We were standing near the railing, staring across the black ocean when he suddenly asked, "Ever heard of the second moon?" I laughed. "The what?" Tim took a slow drag from his cigarette. My grandfather sailed tankers for 40 years. He used to tell me that if you're ever out at sea and you see two moons reflected in the water. He paused. You go inside immediately. I smirked. And why would I do that? Tim looked out into the darkness. For a moment he didn't answer. Then he quietly said, "Because it means something underneath is looking back at you." The way he said it sent a chill through me. Not because of the story, because he sounded like he believed every word. A few minutes later, Tim headed inside. I should have done the same. Instead, curiosity got the better of me. I lit another cigarette and walked toward the railing. The moon hung bright above the ocean. I leaned forward and looked down at the reflection, and instantly froze. There were two moons, not a blurry reflection, not a trick of the waves. Two perfectly clear moons floating side by side on the water. For several seconds, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. Then I quickly pulled out my phone and took a picture. When I checked the screen, there was only one moon. The second reflection was gone. I didn't stay outside another second. I practically ran back to my cabin. That night, I woke up at exactly 3:07 a.m. At first, I wasn't sure what had woken me. Then I heard it. Footsteps, heavy footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving through the corridor outside my cabin. But they didn't sound human. Each step landed with a wet, metallic thump, like something waterlogged dragging itself across steel. I sat up and listened. Thump, pause, thump, pause, thump. Eventually curiosity won again. I opened my cabin door. The hallway was empty, completely empty. Then I noticed movement through a nearby porthole. Someone was standing outside on deck. It looked like Tim. He stood motionless near the railing, not looking at the ocean, not looking at the ship, looking straight up into the night sky. For nearly a minute, he didn't move. Neither did I. Something about it felt wrong.
deeply wrong.
Eventually, I convinced myself I was tired and imagining things. I went back to bed.
The next morning, Tim was gone.
Nobody had seen him. At first, everyone assumed he'd fallen overboard, but the more we talked about it, the less sense that explanation made. Tim wasn't careless. He'd spent most of his life at sea. The captain reviewed the ship's security footage. What we found made my stomach drop.
The footage showed me opening my cabin door at 3:07 a.m.
It showed me standing beside the porthole. It showed me staring outside for almost an entire minute, but there was nobody on deck.
Nobody, not a single person.
Whatever I'd seen that night, it wasn't Tim. Weeks passed.
People moved on. Some believed it was an accident.
Others believed Tim had taken his own life. Eventually, everyone found an explanation that helped them sleep at night. I never did. I stopped going outside alone after dark.
And the moment we returned to port, I quit.
Years passed. Life went on. The memories faded.
Eventually, I stopped thinking about the second moon entirely. Until tonight. A few minutes ago, I was standing in my kitchen washing dishes.
Nothing unusual.
Just another ordinary evening. Then I glanced down into the sink. The basin was filled with water.
Reflected on the surface were two moons.
I immediately looked through the window. There was only one moon in the sky.
One, just one.
Which means whatever was looking up at me all those years ago
has found me again.
And this time I'm not surrounded by an ocean, it's much closer. If you're listening to this story and you ever happen to see two moons reflected in water,
don't stare.
Don't take pictures. And whatever you do, don't wait to see what's looking back. Leave immediately.
The story ends here.
But some mysteries never truly end.
Good night, and I'll see you in the next story.